All right. Looks like we're live. Very nice. I was a bit concerned then. I didn't know. I didn't know if it'd connect because I'm not trusting the connection on my phone. Sorry, I'm not on my phone. On Virgin Media because we've had a bit of a nightmare with Virgin Media at the minute. But hey, listen, it's good. It's all good, and thank you for joining in. I'm using my iPad actually because it's a lot easier to put my iPad against my laptop and actually speak to you guys on it. But I will now get involved. My man for today, who is Mark Blundell, he's requested. Let's add him. So, and we'll wait for Mark to join us. But what an honour and a privilege to get Mark to join us and have a bit of a chat about all things racing and all things BTCC. Can you hear me, fella? And how are you?
I think I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, mate. How you doing?
I'm all right. Not bad. Not bad. Got the stubble like you. Actually, I've got a bit more than the stubble, but there you go. COVID haircut, stubble.
COVID-19. I think you're winning. You're winning the battle of the bonces here, because I mean, mine doesn't grow that fast, mate. But like yours looks like it needs thinning out. Look how thick your hair is.
Yeah, well, mine's a tad greyer than yours, I would say that. So think yourself fortunate, Paul.
Yeah, a lot of people probably say that I dye my hair, but honestly, I've never dyed it in my life. It's just going a bit thin on top. But listen, fella, how's it going? What's been happening? I've been watching a few of your. Well, you seem like you do a podcast or an Instagram live every day, mate. So have you been keeping yourself busy?
No, I think it's a little bit like current racing drivers are on simulators every day. Former racing drivers seem to be invited along to do podcasts and webinars and everything else. So, yeah, everyone needs to fill their time doing something.
Yeah, it is. It's mad, isn't it? Just speaking for myself, I've been flat out on cycling, so that's kept me quite sane and quite busy, and healthy mind and a bit healthier body, which I needed. But it is weird what people do because they've got this downtime. The drivers, there's a lot of sim stuff going on, isn't there? And I see a friend of mine, Joe Osborne, has set up something on Twitter called "We Buy Any Sim" because he reckons everyone's going to have a sim left over after all this.
I love that.
It's going to be quite interesting what happens with it all, but I haven't succumbed to that, so we'll see what happens. But listen, brilliant to have you come along with Pitch BTCC and talk about a bit of motorsport. And I think that with British touring cars, which is kind of the last thing that you've raced up to now. Some of the younger fans, I don't think will know that much about what you've done, and you've basically succeeded in every formula really that you've been in: Formula One, Le Mans, kart or IndyCar as it was known, and it's an exceptional career, isn't it, that you've had? And I know you've talked about it a lot, but if you're anything like me, you like talking about the past, mate, because the past was cool, wasn't it?
Well, when you get to my age, you have to talk about the past. I mean, that's a simplistic way of looking at it, but yeah. Well, listen. It's been a great career in terms of the enjoyment, and I've been very fortunate and incredibly lucky to be in one piece and still be able to talk about it. But if I'm being brutal, my worst ever racing season was last year in terms of results. Even from day one when I first started, I mean, I never had so much sort of negativity in production of results than last year. So. Not to dwell on that too much, because I think we've all seen that and understood that it probably wasn't the best move in the world, but even so, I enjoyed it immensely. British touring cars was always something I wanted to have a go at. I confess that I am not a tin top specialist, and I will leave that to the professionals. But the years in front of that, yeah, we had some fun, Paul. We had some great times: F1, IndyCar, Le Mans, even a bit of World Rally. So we've done a few things, but I would probably say one of the biggest challenges ever in my motorsport career that spans nearly 30 odd years would be driving a front wheel drive racing car in touring cars last year.
Yeah, it's amazing really, isn't it? Because like you say, you don't want to dwell on it because, people have come and gone and it's difficult. And let's be honest, it'd be nice, wouldn't it, actually, because you're now sporting director of Mark Blundell Motorsport. Do you not fancy a little go in the Honda? See what it's like?
Well, listen, if the opportunity comes along where I need to go and have a little test and just understand what I'm missing, and maybe see what I could have done, of course I will jump at it.
Yeah.
But you know, I think at the moment there's much bigger things to be done for this year. You know, listen, I'm over the moon that we've got a calendar to talk about. That's great. I'm over the moon that we've got a little bit of positivity, because I think the world needs it in terms of where we are at the moment. We're all stuck in the same boat. But, you know, if we can get a bit of fun back together again and something to focus on over the course of the weekend, then why not in some way be able to do that with the British Touring Car Championship, whether we're watching it on TV or whether we're, whatever the case may be. Let's try and understand what that may be in the future. But I'm more than happy to be thinking about a positive stuff rather than negative.
Yeah, no, of course, I love it. And that's, for me, British Touring Cars is all about that. There's a lot of positivity from the fans. We all try and, you know, latch onto positivity, and that's what gets you through, isn't it? And, you know, talking about that positivity, I think, you know me, Mark, I'm a massive 90s Formula One fan. But, you know, the things I think about, for me, that jump out are, you know, your time at Brabham, you know, early on in your F1 career in 91 with Brundle. You always seem to be, did you guys just like tag team and go, where are you going, mate? Are you off, were you coming to Ligier? What are we doing? What was the sketch? I know you probably always get asked that, but, and I know you had a management company, but like, he's like, mate, should we go and have a word and see if we get in there?
It's quite funny. You know, we come from the same part of the world, East Anglia. Our dads were both car dealers. Obviously, the names are similar, you know, but not quite the same, but very similar. And it's worked in my favour on occasion, I must admit. You know, it has been advantageous. I remember testing for Williams, actually, at Paul Ricard and having a humongous accident. And I think across all the motorsport papers, the headlines were Brundle crashes Williams. You know, a news story at that point, because Brundle wasn't connected with Williams. But yeah, the journalist got the name wrong, and definitely made my life a bit easier.
That's brilliant.
And I have pinched his first class air seat as well. Yeah, I've told that story a few times. Yeah, so M Brundle and M Blundell in Japanese is spelt in the same way. So
oh, right, okay.
he spent 9 hours in the back of the bus going from Japan to Australia back in the days when we used to run at Adelaide in Grand Prix. So, and he paid for a first class seat. That was the more impressive thing. There you go. Yeah, but no, listen, we are good buddies, very good mates, and yeah, we went to Brabham. I was already going to, actually, I was following on from Martin, bizarrely, actually, talking about this. When he was at Silk Cup Jaguar, he was racing for Walkinshaw at Silk Cup, and I'd been doing the World Sports Car Championship, and I actually had a heads of agreement lined up with Tom Walkinshaw to go and drive for the Jaguar Silk Cup racing team. That was where I was heading. I wasn't going to F1. And from the conversation with Tom and to the actual delivery of a paper contract, in that contract, there was a fiscal number that was missing, which was a bonus number, which we'd negotiated verbally. And at that point, I got on the phone to Tom and said, look, you know, is this some misunderstanding? I thought there was a number here that was, you know, agreed between us, but it's not in the paperwork. In that same period of time, Brabham contacted me and said, like, we want you to go and race for us. So I took the opportunity to go to Formula One instead of going to Jaguar. Thinking about it now, maybe I should have gone to Jaguar because the Brabham opportunity wasn't the best of ones. Yes, it got me into Grand Prix. Yes, I was a salaried racing driver. I think back then I didn't earn a huge amount, and most of it went on travel because I had to pay for my own travel. And the car wasn't that good, Paul. I mean, you know, quite honestly, it wasn't a great car. And, you know, that's one of the big reasons why after doing what I did at Brabham for year one, I understood and realised I needed to do something with a bigger team. And I went back to test again for McLaren in 92. So, but I'm not complaining.
Yeah, people don't know that, do they? You were McLaren test driver, Williams test driver, all the active stuff, probably the paddle gear shift, I would have thought. I mean, working with people like Senna and that, it's only you and Dick Bennett who know Ayrton Senna, as far as I know.
Hey, listen, I probably think that after looking back I've probably done more miles in an active ride suspension Formula One car than any other driver on the planet, because I did all of the Williams work. I was there for 2 years doing all their test work. So active ride, semi-automatic gearboxes, a bit of CVT, a bit of ABS. But then I did a load of the work as well for McLaren. So I've done a huge amount of mileage on tracks. Had a huge amount of failures as well in active ride cars, which are not fun at the best of times. Half the skill of driving a race car is keeping hold of it. But when it's doing things that you don't fully understand underneath you, that's a different battle.
Yeah, unbelievable. And what really sticks out in my mind is you and Blundell going over to Ligier and having that fantastic season. You had a couple of podiums, I remember. Fantastic battle with Berger at Hockenheim. But I think the amazing thing was for me was when I turned on the race on the Sunday of Magny-Cours, and you guys were, I think, 3rd and 4th on the grid.
Yeah. No, we were on the second row. You're right. Of course, it was our home circuit, and we'd done a few laps around Magny-Cours. If anybody knew how to get around that place, it should have been myself and Martin. And a little bit of extra whiz bang that weekend from Renault, I think, helped, because, don't forget, Ligier back then was fully supported by French companies who more or less were government-backed companies. And that was actually quite political, because I was the first English driver ever to be signed by the French national team as such, by Ligier. And then Martin came along after me. Where Martin was much smarter than me is that he spoke French. I didn't. And lo and behold, over the course of the season, I'm sure he understood a lot more about what was going on in the background than what I did. And he was very good at making sure that he kept his seat for the year after. And I walked away from Ligier having to go to Tyrrell that year. So, yeah, he's much better at politics than me, Paul. Much better.
I studied politics at A-level, to be fair, for 2 weeks. Then I left college. Yeah, I got throughout. True story. So I don't know much about politics, to be fair, for 2 weeks.
Well, don't worry about that. We're in the same boat there then. I didn't go to school much, so we're all similar.
Well, I heard that you didn't kart either.
I didn't. No, I didn't do karting. I did motocross. So, yeah, 2 wheels. I mean, I love motorbikes. Obviously, Damon Hill came from road racing on bikes before he got into a car. So quite similar pathways in some respects for us. I still love motocross today. I think it's an incredible sport. It's not quite as big as what it used to be, especially in the UK. I remember even as a kid watching it on a Saturday afternoon, watching guys like John Banks and Bickers, people like that. Back then were kind of household names. You'd watch scrambling on a Saturday afternoon, but it's not really got the credibility that it deserves, because it's an outstanding sport, and I really do enjoy watching it even today, especially in America. I mean, they know how to do things over there, entertainment factor. Yeah,
it's interesting because some of the best guys I've raced against in British touring cars have been Alan Morrison. He was a brilliant motocrosser, brilliant in the wet, great in the dry, but just unreal in the wet. Matt Neal was a good motocrosser back in the day, and he was, brilliant in the wet. I think I don't rate him in the dry, to be fair. No, I'm joking. But he was my teammate, Mark, in 2002. And you were on about Blundell and yourself. People used to call him Paul Neal and call me Matt O'Neill. So we used to get our names. And that's the sponsor at the time, Egg. That was one of the reasons they employed us, because they liked they were a funny company, Egg Credit Card, and they liked all that. So the quirkiness was there.
That's very good. I like that.
And they just love a bit of a giggle. So that's what happens with sponsors, isn't it? But I won't take much of your time up with Formula One.
Oh, you know what? Alan Morrison, yeah? I raced against him in motocross as a schoolboy.
Really?
Yeah. Irish.
Yeah,
Irish lad?
Northern Irish. Yeah. That's
it. I raced against him. Yeah. So we were both top 36 ACU schoolboy riders, right. And Alan actually went on further than what I did, because he was a professional. He went on to do professional adult motocross. He was I think a Suzuki factory rider. I raced against him. I remember him well. And you talking about the wet is actually quite a relevant point, because I've always been competitive in the wet. And especially when Formula 4 1600 was in those early days, my lines would be quite different to many others. And I always put that down to the fact that I was taught that with motocross, because you go on a motocross track and it changes every corner, every lap, and you're always looking for grip. And, you know, when you drive on the race circuit and you've got rain, it's exactly the same way of looking at things. So, yeah, quite it's an interesting one. That makes a lot.
Yeah, no, it did. It was something that really stuck out in my mind with Alan. He was just like, when you're behind someone in the wet and you're like, where is he going? And like he'd come back across you and then he'd like pull 6 car lengths up the road and go, right, okay, that looks all right. I'll have a go with that. But his contacts with Honda at the time in motocross brought Honda as a manufacturer back into British touring cars in 2002 with Andy Prio. So, like, I've heard you talk about relationships, and obviously with your business as well. It's a big thing, isn't it? It's not just about the driving, is it? It's a bonus having that contact as well.
Yeah, I mean, you know, listen, I still manage drivers, and I'm always saying to them that, you know, you've got to build those relationships, because you never know when you might need them. And, you know, I'm not being sort of, you know, it's not about using people. It is about actually having foundations of relationships that are reciprocal, because when the tough, you know, I say when the going gets tough, the tough get going. That expression didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of the fact that it's born from relationships. And we're in that situation now. I mean, you know, everybody down pit lane, we're all having to work together to try and make sure that there is something that we can deliver come the end of this season. And that's something that we've all got to make sure that we do. We've got to sort of lean on each other now when things are a little bit difficult, and make sure that we stick together. And all right, when things get rosy again, maybe we'll get the old, you know, the swords out and the daggers, and we'll be fighting each other down pit lane. But it's all about making sure that we get the show back on the road, and relationships are all at the heart of that. That's really where it all starts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. No, I'm with you, and that's what we do as racers, isn't it? I'm fully with you on that. I'll just take a question actually off Stu Cam. He says, "Hi Mark, loved your drives in 1995 in the 1995 McLaren. What was the hardest thing about driving that car? Because it wasn't the best thing in the world. I remember it was a kind of a midfield car that you and Hakkinen kind of got up the front, from what I remember."
Well, it was the infamous car that Nigel didn't fit in, supposedly. But anyway, it was. Listen, it wasn't a great car. I mean, if you talk to anybody at McLaren, I think by their own admission, they would tell you that it was what we would say in the business, a bit of a dog of a car. Although, you know, we had some results with it, but some of that was down to sort of attrition in some of the Grand Prix back then. You used to get a lot of mechanical failures. I love being at McLaren. I love the guys there. They always had an outlook of being a very cold team, but in fact, it's a reverse. Had a very, very warm heart. But that car in particular wasn't great. I mean, it was a shame because it was the first year of Mercedes-Benz back into F1 as an engine supplier. And we had this like T-tray that was a little aerodynamic spoiler that was behind the driver's heads. Probably the least effective piece of aero work on a Formula One car I've ever seen, but great for putting your cup of tea on when you're in the garage. So yeah,
I could have gone and seen that.
So, I mean, we back to back that so many times. We've taken it off and putting it back on, and you know, to this day, I don't think it made a Scooby-Doo a difference, that one. So it's fun memories in some ways, but you know, a tough season as well. Don't forget, because you know, Mercedes-Benz were with us. German Grand Prix, I think both of us, myself and Mika, got lapped. You know, very hard to swallow that for a team like McLaren, just because performance was so poor. Obviously, then we went on and we had the accident with Mika, which was incredibly difficult, and thankful that he came through that, and thankful that somebody is there to help on the sidelines to support and save him. But because, you know, if that medical person wasn't around, things would be very different. But yeah. Not the best of race cars. Wouldn't be in my top 5. Wouldn't even be in my top 50, to be honest.
Yeah, it didn't look like it, I must admit. I remember coming in from my paper round in that year, and when Hakkinen had the accident, and it was so violent, wasn't it? But you actually had 2 good Grand Prix at the end of that year. Japan and Adelaide was actually not bad results, were they?
No, actually, you're right. I mean, Japan. Even though I had a few podiums, yeah, I had a few podiums during my career sort of thing, but I'd actually say the Japanese Grand Prix in '95 was one of my best Grand Prix ever in terms of what we did, because I started from the back of the grid. I tried to go through, I think it was 180R or something at Suzuka. I tried to go through the corner flat in top gear. No, it didn't work. I ended up in the barrier, and humongous accident, big shunt. Double vision. Prof Watkins back then wouldn't let me get back in the car again, and I wasn't feeling too great, to be perfectly honest. But they allowed me to start at the back of the grid on the Grand Prix the following day, and all the teams signed off on it to allow it to happen. And I came all the way back through to actually to 5th place on the road. I think I ended up being 6th in the results, and maybe 5th or 6th, can't think. But I was actually told to move over and let Mika go by, because I was in front of Mika. But yeah, listen, it was one of my best performances inside a race car, and I remember it very well. But Adelaide, we did score, I think 5th, or 4th. Maybe no, I think it was 5th.
No, it was 4th.
Was it 4th? There you go. You see, that shows my age, man. I can't remember. No, you're right, because we were on for maybe a possible podium there as well. And the only problem was we had a floor stay that had broken very early on in the Grand Prix, and we'd lost a lot of downforce, and the floor was flapping around. And I think actually our pace was diminishing as the race was going on. I remember now, because Frentzen was in the Williams, I think, or maybe it was a Sauber. Oh, my memory's so bad. And I think he flipped me the bird as he went by me in the race. Yeah, very rude.
I remember seeing there was a Ted Kravitz or someone was interviewing Harold Heinz Frentzen the other day on wherever it was they were racing. It was like a notebook thing, and he looked proper ruined, mate. So you look mega, Mark, so don't worry about that. And he looks destroyed, fella. You've come through all right, lad. Jeez. Listen, what about when you moved on then? And because you went over to kart in '96 with Pac West, and you had a good time actually, didn't you? But was it weird, because it was IndyCar before that, but then it changed, didn't it? There must have been some politics flying around when you went over. Yeah,
when I did my deal, the reason why I went to America is because I'd actually signed a heads of agreement to go to Sauber for the following season off the back of McLaren. That had got taken off of me, basically, because at the point where all this was going on, they took on a new investor, which was a guy called Dieter Mateschitz, who's a guy who's Red Bull now, and he became a shareholder, and part of his control was that he wanted the decision on who was going to be in the seat, who was going to be the following year's driver. And his remit was he wanted a Grand Prix winning driver. Well, of course, I hadn't won a Grand Prix, and the only guy who'd won a Grand Prix and was unemployed at the time was Johnny Herbert. So Johnny actually ended up taking that seat. And I then got a bit disheartened with F1, but had been given a Mercedes-Benz engine contract because Merck were very happy with what I'd done at McLaren. And as a bit of a going-away present, they said, look, here's an IndyCar program. Stick it on your back, go over the pond, see what you can do. I rung up my friends, Adrian Reynard and Rick Gorn at the time. I had a big relationship with those guys. They said, I want to go to America. And they said, right, well, we'll point you in the right direction. And I did a deal with a guy called Bruce McCaw. Never even met the guy. Did a deal over the phone. Turned up in America. In fact, I turned up to his house. It was the most embarrassing thing ever, because this guy, Bruce, is like a billionaire. Yeah, I mean, he's a very wealthy individual. And I turned up in this big estate in Washington on Seattle, actually, was in Washington State, and we're there, and I knocked on the door after I'd gone through the gates and everything else, and this guy answered the door, and he turned up, and he had like this, I remember it vividly, he had like this Casio watch with a load of elastic bands around the strap, holding it together. Yeah? And I looked at him and said, hello, I've come to see Mr. McCaw. And he looked at me up and down, he going like, well, that's me. And I looked at him, I'm like, really? Are you like a billionaire? Because you've got like a watch with rubber bands holding it together. I don't really understand. Anyway, we got on like a house on fire, and I was 5 years with Bruce and the Pac West team. But again, racing, ups and downs, nearly killed me at one point.
Couple of big shunts, mate.
Yeah. No, big one in Rio, brake failure. Another big one in testing at St. Louis Oval, where the car selected a lower gear going into an oval corner and pitched me in backwards. And I went in and hit at like 175 miles an hour backwards and opened up the vertebrae in my neck with the force of the impact. So yeah, a couple of big ones. But listen, as I said to you earlier on in this, I'm still around to talk about it. So it's all positive.
Yeah, and some good wins as well, mate. Super speedways, you know. So I mean, did you feel? Is it the first time you'd ever felt mortal when you were? Sound like someone off Geordie Shore, don't I? Get mortal. Did you feel mortal when you were there? You thought this could be a bit tricky when you first went.
You know what it's like driving. I don't know. Have you ever driven on an oval? Have you ever raced an oval or driven on an oval track?
Only Thruxton. No, I've never known.
Well, just to give you an idea, say you turn up on a 1 mile oval circuit that's got like 18 degrees of banking, and you roll onto pit lane and the steering wheel sort of like left hand down and the car's crabbing along, and you know you've got different tires at different sizes, you've got suspension, your whole brain is telling you that this is wrong. You know, you're looking at this racing car and it's all sitting there like, yeah, and you just can't relate to it. But you get out there and you start to run around in circles, and actually I have to tell you, it's one of the most satisfying things in a race car. Once you get it right, it really is a great feeling and you're really well rewarded. But when you get it wrong, or if you've got a car that's not working, it's probably the most scared I've ever been in a race car. I mean, white knuckle stuff, you know, to the point where I'm like, seriously, I think I need to pull this thing in because you're just a passenger.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? I used to watch it as a kid. The guy over the road, he had Sky. No one else had Sky in the road. It was early 90s, and people like Stan Fox and them having massive shunts with the legs out of the car and that. And I was always scared because there was talk of Johnny Herbert going over as well, I remember one time. And the press were saying, don't go over there, Johnny, it's this and it's that. And I remember you went over. Your first year was like finding your feet, it looked like. And then the second year, you just looked like, you know, you were right into it. And I just couldn't think of anything worse, mate. I get scared at Brands Hatch Indy.
I mean, listen, all I would say to you is that, you know, a lot of guys I know who have been at the top of their game, they talk about it and like, oh, it looks easy going around in circles. But when I say to them, well, you know, why don't you put your money where your mouth is? And then it becomes a different sort of story. Martin Brundle's done a few oval races with, not with a full-on NASCAR, but with a couple of IROC cars.
Okay.
But with some of the big drivers. And he'll tell you as well, I mean, even those guys and those levels, I mean, it's a different art. It's a different discipline altogether.
It looks like it's not for me, that. Wow. Let's talk about British touring cars, fella. We just spoke about, you've come away from the driving side of things. What did you know about British touring cars before you got involved? Because I remember a rumour coming up when I was driving in 2003 for Vauxhall that Mark Blundell was going to be driving for MG and West Surrey Racing in 2004 or 3. I can't really remember when, but yeah, I did hear, because you drove for them at Le Mans as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I had a contract with MG, and there was a lot of discussion actually about me going and doing touring cars back then. Listen, I've always loved the British Touring Car Championship. I just it's always been for me like entertainment. You know, it's John Cleland. You know, I remember watching John. You know, Tim Harvey. I mean, I like a lot of the boys. You know, some great racing over the years, and some great memories that I still have watching those guys. And even when I was in Formula Ford 1600, you know, again watching some of these guys in touring cars, they were sensational races. So I've never been a tin top guy, never been a saloon car guy. I've always been single seaters or big sports car stuff. So the opportunity came along. MG, yes, I did go and actually test once, and we did all right actually. I think it was quite reasonable back then. But you know, when the opportunity came along last year with our partners, which is HP and Intel, without them I wouldn't have been doing anything. Trust me. But it was something that I had to go and do just to sort of fulfill the dream. The dream turned into a bit of a nightmare because I could not get my head around driving one of those cars, a front wheel drive car. I was never going to do front wheel drive. I had a rear wheel drive deal lined up that fell away during Christmas and New Year. But, you know, push come to shove, we still had to get back on the grid with something because we had our partners who were supporting us. And the front wheel drive just didn't suit my style. And I think that's, in reflection now, one of the biggest issues that I had. Just the way that I've driven for 30 odd years, the way that I apply a throttle pedal, and I can't get my brain to rewire to change that way of doing things. So it just took me a whole season to find that out.
Yeah, but the thing is, I think the fans, and I'm sure you know, a lot of these fans are saying hi, and they've got some questions here, and there's only a little window that I can see in, but they really took to you, I think, because of your honesty, and you know, your grit and determination and doing what you've done. I think as well now, I think more the fact that it looks like you are, and I might be getting this wrong, mate, you're really looking out for someone in your team now that I think probably maybe reminds you a bit of what you were like, Jake Hill. I think he's one of the biggest stars on the touring car grid, and his dad's probably second behind me as one of your fans.
No, Paul, listen, I worked alongside Jake last year. I have a huge amount of time for him, huge amount of admiration. I can see that, you know, he's been pushing as much as he can. He's struggled like many of us did in those early years. But what he has is ability, and he's got grit and determination to go with it. So, you know, for me, it's like, how do I support him in whatever way I can? And luckily for us, we've been able to get support with some of our partners again for this year. And we've been able to give him some help in making sure that he's back on the grid again in I hope, race-winning machinery. You know, with a team that understands what Jake needs, as well as Sam. You know, I think Sam Osborne's come into our team with probably a tough season that was behind him, which I can relate to, and I've got every understanding of where he's at. But I think what we need to do with Sam is we need to just tell Sam that he's actually better than what he thinks he is, and actually make him believe in himself. So yeah, that will be good for him to be with Jake, because Jake's got every bit of self-belief. You don't need to tell him. All we need to do with Jake is give him the right equipment and the right strategy, and point him in the right direction, and he'll go and get the job done. So that's what I'm hoping will happen over the course of this season. The two of them will pull each other along. Sam, I think, will learn a huge amount, and hopefully Jake will lead a team into that sort of podium position on a regular basis. Yeah, and if he doesn't, you know, if he doesn't do that, Paul, then I'll just have to get back in the seat again myself and get on with the job.
Be like when you were at McLaren on a race-by-race contract then.
Yeah, I haven't told Jake.
But no, you're right about Sam. I think, you know, it's difficult for your first year in anything, but it's a free year to me because no one's really expected massive amounts, and Sam's a lovely lad, and I honestly think he has got the talent to, you know, to go forward. So, and it's about the team environment as well. You know, the car works. You know exactly what the car's going to do. So everything will work out. But it's great. You've got a great little team, fantastic lineup. Sean Hollenby's a fantastic guy as well. You couldn't really wish for anything more, could you?
No, I mean, listen, I'm really looking forward to it, and of course it's been tough actually to try and understand where we're all heading, but hopefully now with the calendar out and a little bit more positivity around the whole COVID situation, we've got something to focus on. But you know what drivers are like. You were a successful driver. You understand, you know, what the scenario is and making them tick. And we're quite fickle at times. You know, we're only human, and we also need to make sure that, you know, we need a big arm around us at times, and that really is going to be the main role when I'm around at a British touring car event. It's going to be making sure that I'm extracting the best out of our drivers and our team personnel, because, you know, it's that link and that synergy that needs to drive the package on. And somebody like Sean's been around touring cars for a long, long time, 10 years plus. He's done plenty of driving himself. He understands it. And he's good at, you know, wielding the stick when it needs to be wielded. And he's also good at making sure that he's got the arm around you when it needs to be done as well. And that's the important, it's making sure that there's that confidence factor there for the guys to grow. and not just Jake or Sam, everybody in the team. You know, we want to make sure that we've got everyone happy, gel together, and when that's harmonious, that's when you get success.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, and I'm with you with that. It's that's when I've operated the best, to be honest as well. So that's brilliant to hear. Them guys are going to go well. So, what are your aims then for the team?
I mean, you listen, like already the independent champions from last season, they understand how to go motor racing. So as an operational outfit, I don't think there's much we need to tweak. We've got a new look. We've got a new vibe. I think that will be something that we can carry through the season. We've got some big commercial partners. You know, I think people saw that when we came into the sport last year. We've also got some big names that are going to be with us again this year. And, you know, I think to take the level from the track and that performance and success and try and match it off the circuit as well, Paul, because, you know, without sponsors, without partners, we can't go and do what we all love doing at the weekend. And, you know, an important factor for us. We've got to make sure that we work that side of things, and it's for the benefit of the sport in general. You know, it isn't going to be easy, the future, for all of us. So we've got to make sure that we give everybody as much, you know, justification about being with us as a sport as we can, and support them as much as what they do us.
Yeah, definitely. I'm with you, mate. And that, you know, and that's the way to look at the long term, isn't it? Because too many people, for me, look at it short term in British touring cars especially, and it's definitely going to be a different way to think about it. But sounds like you've been around the block, mate. But and putting your deals together yourself and stuff. You've done kind of everything in motorsport. Actually, you've managed people. You're going to be, you know, leading a team, so to speak, with the help of other people. Driving. I mean, what else is there for you to do, mate? Marshall.
Well, I guess I could go and look at running Formula One or something like that. I don't know.
Liberty Media, get out the way. I won't take your time up now, fella.
I've been very lucky, Paul. Very, very, very lucky indeed to do what I've done. And as I say, you know, if I can help people on the journey, and I'm all about, you know, the next generation, and if we can support them, and if we can give entertainment back to the fans, because let's face it, that's what it's all about. You know, it's making sure that we all enjoy what we do, and I'm just hopeful that we're going to get fans back on the circuit, and they're all going to be able to entertain themselves on Sunday afternoon watching everyone go around in circles. But, you know, outside of that, we're fortunate. We've got technology. We've got ways of accessing things ordinarily that we wouldn't be able to do. So let's try and maximise that side of things if we need to do it as well.
Yeah, no, that's going to be cool, isn't it? I can't wait. Can't wait to get started. And I'm sure you know, Mark, I'm going to head up the Pitch BTCC stuff on the new app, doing their streaming segments for them. So that'll be quite cool. Don't know how well you are up to speed, but I put a little video together and I said, you know, the fans can name the new segment that we're going to do. So I've got some names here, mate, that people have already said. We haven't completed it yet. So anybody that's watching, go to @PitchBTCC, use the hashtag new name on Twitter. And these are the ones that have come in already. What do you reckon of these? I'm going to give you a few, mate. Under the bonnet. It's all right, isn't it?
Yeah.
They get better.
Yeah.
Pitch paddock party. I think I'll struggle to say that. Might get me peas up, mate. Oh, this one's a cool one. Never mind the ballast.
Yeah, that would apply to me from last year. But anyway.
I think someone's put that on because they're taking the mickey out of me. Yeah, I'll find out who that was, mate. I like this one. Slicks on Saturday.
Yeah, that's got a little, it's got a ring to it.
Yeah. Meal at the wheel. I don't know about that. I wasn't very good at the wheel. That could be a car crash show. This is a good one, Mark. Box. I like that, mate. That could be taken in a different way. And the last one I don't mind at all, but you might not get it. This is from when you're from around where I am and near Liverpool. They call lads. They call them lids. All right, lid, because they say it so fast. All right, lid. How's it going, lid? This one is called lifting the lid, which I think is, if that's not from a Scouser, I don't know what's happening with the world. So I've got some good ones there, mate, but definitely be good if you haven't got any off the top of your head, have you, mate? Actually, I don't want to ask you that. You'll probably say something.
No, no, I think I'll leave that to the professionals. But that's great. I'm glad to hear that you're going to be back with us doing your stuff. Are you still going to keep doing that spin with the microphone and throwing it about and stuff like that?
I turned 40 on New Year's Eve, and I'll be honest, my knees are really hurting, mate. I tried it the other day just to see if I could still do it. But yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to. Might be able to catch a few rogue mics, but maybe not dance, mate. So I might leave that to the professionals as well. Oh, someone's just sent one in anyway. Paradise in Park Fair, mate. Nice one, Harry. I like that, mate. Get that into the Twitter at PitchBTCC, #new name. Listen, Marky Mark, it's 7:10. You've been on for 40 minutes, mate. I've probably bored you to death. And listen, thank you for coming along. It's been absolutely awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing what you and the guys can do. And yeah, peace out, my man.
Listen, Paul, thank you. Thank you to Pitch BTCC. And let's all make sure that we go racing again before the end of the year, eh? And let's enjoy it.
Top man. I can't wait, mate. Thank you, fella. Appreciate it.